Okay. Are we connected? Yes. Okay, let me call this meeting to order. And let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As you know, I'm David Levy. I'm chair of the Electoral Board. And let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. Dan, you have no deputies here.
Yeah, they're actually all working really good. They're taking care of everything. I'm Danny Metz, I'm the registrar.
I'm Betty Gibbs, the Electoral Board Secretary.
I'm Steve Troxel, the vice chair of the Electoral Board.
I'm Roz Webb, citizen.
I'm Cora Sefrani, citizen.
I'm her husband here. Just here to keep an eye on
Sure, what's your
Kurt Gamer, candidate for City Council.
Michelle Harvey, veteran candidate for Lynchburg City Council. Right.
Jeff Rosner, Lynchburg Democratic Committee, authorized representative to the Electoral Board, and also voter protection liaison.
Five women voters.
Thank you. Okay, let's move into the agenda. We posted an agenda on the Registrar Electoral Board website. Board, are there any additional changes in the agenda? Are any suggestions?
No, nothing for me.
Okay, then may I have a motion to approve the agenda as
So moved.
second? All in favor? Passed. We have the minutes of the last meetings that were posted on the website. Is there any unreadiness on adopting minutes?
Have a public meeting this time.
Did we have a closed meeting last night? I don't think we
I don't
did.
think we did.
No,
Okay, I will make a motion that we accept the minutes for the open meeting.
that's right. Second, all in favor? Do we have any announcements other than the upcoming election?
Meyer, the registrar board.
Okay, let's move on into your registration.
Okay, let me minimize this. There we go. Okay, I'll come back over and see if I can drive this down from here. That's there. Okay, registrar's report for October 3rd, 2024. Table of contents, we have some statistical reports, budgetary reports, ongoing projects, and then a couple of announcements, recommendations where that's appropriate. First report that we look at generally is this registrants by count, counts by locality. This just gives us an updated number as of 10/1 of all of the registered voters within Lynchburg by precinct. As you can see, it shows active and inactive voters. It also breaks out military, overseas, and federal, which are included in the overall numbers. The total number of voters right now within Lynchburg is 58,183. Any questions on these numbers? Okay. Mortality statistics for this past month of September. This is a report that shows kind of the incoming and outgoing registrants. We are actually up across the board in this past month, not a shock because we have got a lot of registrations that have been happening because people are interested in the upcoming election. So you can see down the second to the right column, the net change. And you can see the number for each and every precinct, the ending total. And we have a couple of precincts that are right at the limit of what our ballot box and scanner will tolerate, should we actually get 100% turnout. Don't know if we're going to 100% turnout or not, but that is something that we've prepared for all of these. In 401, we may have to make an adjustment, meaning a second thumb drive might be used in the scanner should we actually get to 100%. And then that would trigger our review. And the same thing for precinct 201. That would trigger our review also of whether or not we are need to divide those precincts into some smaller segments. I will note, and I'm going to make this comment a little later, that Ward 302, Precinct 302, Ward 3, is the precinct for Liberty University. That's showing right now at 4806. That's a total active, inactive. As you are aware, because of that's a college precinct, we have a number of voters who move off. So it's very difficult to tell where actual number of voters will be. I've just been reported to me that there are 4,000 new students on campus this fall. And so we don't know what fraction of those will vote, but that could change our number of voters. That has to be balanced against the number of inactive voters, people who have actually left that precinct as part of that 4806. Very difficult to tell what the exact number will be, but just want to note that that's it. That of all the numbers up there, that's the one that's kind of the fuzziest.
I will note, because I checked it earlier, that not quite half of those are inactive, but with the active voters you have listed in your paperwork, it's still the 9th largest precinct. So it's larger than 9 other precincts, so it's still a significant factor.
Right.
Yeah, it's the one that we, makes planning more difficult.
Yeah,
Especially.
true. And we've had difficulty getting a lot of cooperation until recently when the new president decided that he was on board with working with us, and it's become a better situation. Although we still have room for improvement.
Okay.
Right, and I just to back up, actually, no, I'm on the right slide, sorry here. You'll notice that in the net change for that column, for that precinct 302, we're up by 220. That's because we actually got registration applications, which is very good because otherwise we're doing same-day registration for others. So we'd like that number to be bigger, but anyway, it's better than it has been in previous elections. Okay, no other questions on this? We'll move on.
And they have until the 15th to do regular registration.
Correct. The regular registration is through the 15th. I would even welcome them to bring some of the students down to do same-day registration in early voting, as opposed to just doing it on election day, because it will help spread the load out a bit. Not that I'm looking for a big bus full of students to come down and do same-day registration after the 15th, but I'm anticipating it's going to be pretty
Someone did send me a link to an Instagram video that President Costins put out for the students to encourage them to register.
Next slide is just a statistical report for the NVRA, National Voter Registration Act. This just keeps track of kind of where some of our applications are coming from. As always, the DMV is, is the largest, but in this particular cycle, we do have a number of registrations coming in third-party drive. That's the fourth line from the bottom there, and column September. As well as a number, you can see our in-person numbers, which you jump up to the middle of the screen under September, is also a little higher because we do have a lot more people just literally coming in to register and also calling, how can I register online, other places. So those registration numbers are up due to the interest in this election. Any questions on this? Okay.
The federal forms row, is that just for federal only election voters, or it's about the 6th down? If you look on the left, federal forms.
I believe that's tracking the FPCA's. I believe that's correct.
Okay,
And the FPCA is a federal, basically postcard. If it's a military or overseas person can request a ballot. If they are military, they get a full ballot. If they are overseas with a, job that's, they're gonna be there, they're gonna come back, they get a full ballot. If they're overseas on certain to return or don't have a job over there, then they get a federal only ballot. That's where the federal only ballots go.
Okay.
Okay, Registrar Department, budget, page 1. Don't think there's a lot controversial on here. You can see kind of on the right-most column where we're running versus our annual budget. There's a percentage in each category that tells you kind of what we've spent of what we're budgeted to do. Nothing here looks too surprising to me. We are now, July 1 is our beginning of our fiscal year. So this is now what, August, September, these couple of months in. And so this is looking fairly normal to me. Page 2, the totals for the registrar's budget are showing, if you look down the sub-department 0150, registrar totals, that shows we're about 25%. That just kind of averages across the whole set there. You see where I'm looking at there, but if you
What number did you say?
So if you look down, if you go down to the left, you'll see where it says sub-department 0150, that's the registrar. Because remember, all this budget is broken down into 2 pieces, right? It's the
Right.
registrar
Oh,
and
I
the
see.
total, right? So if you look all the way across to the right, you'll see that it's about 25%, which is, that's just the summation of kind of where we're at against the original number, right?
quarterly way through to the quarter budget.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Now, where I have a little bit of trouble is the next page. Looking at this, it shows the electoral board, we're at 108, and it's showing 200% for the 500 totals. Look over on the right, halfway down the page there. And I think they're double counting the 143,000 and change we spent for those scanners, right? Because we do have a budget. If you look at the budget amendments in the, let's see, what, 1, 2, 3, fourth column over from the left. If you go down, we see we do have a budget amendment that actually adds money in, which we got that approved from City Council. And then we actually spent that money, but for some reason, it's showing up as, 200% of our total. When you see the overage on the second column from the right on that same line.
Our total was 288.
Right, exactly. So something's off there, right? That's something's not right. So I haven't had a chance to go back to the finance department and find out why this report is.
I don't think we had a lot of parties.
Well, if we did, I wasn't invited.
Yeah, so something's amiss there. It just looks to me like they double counted that. For some reason, it's not. We put it in the budget, but they're not really counting it in our budget somehow. So I don't know why this report is showing that. But anyway, that's.
So the new equipment is paid for.
New equipment is paid for. We got the money into the budget and went ahead and issued the payment for that equipment. So that should all be, it should be budgeted and paid for, and it should be even out. But it looks like there's still something's up with that.
I've got a question about the camera. When we got the new bid, because
Right.
it took them so long, how did that work out?
Well, we have to make the new bid the same as the old bid. Right? So they don't give us any more money if it changed. So we actually ended up subtracting cameras off the original plan, a couple of cameras. Turns out the cameras we subtracted were ones that we were hoping potentially to share with the train station. Because that was we had some cameras down because they were also asking for cameras. It didn't appear that it was going to be possible for us to share the access to those cameras because the city wants to keep their access all within the city boundaries. So it seemed like those are the most logical ones to take out. So that's what we ended up doing. We took out a couple of cameras and then we made all the budget lines up.
Okay.
Is that actually going to happen?
They're actually drilling holes. So one of the things I told them, you have a work window, before the election, after the election, they ignored me. But I told them you're not allowed to come into the precinct. So unfortunately, we walk around the back stairs and do everything, from the back way because they can't come in, traipsing with their ladders and such through the precinct, right? So they've honored that so far, but I've kept an eye on it.
And the setup is such that we could actually add a couple more cameras if we needed to.
We could, it would be at our own cost, and so we would have to decide if we wanted to do that. We still have to face the question of whether or not we need an additional switch, that is the network component. Of course, the grant didn't have that in the list because it wasn't, it wasn't obvious at the time the grant was put in that that was needed. I'm still of the opinion and the argument that this is part of the infrastructure of the building and someone else should pay for that out of their budget. Don't know whether I'll win that argument or not, but certainly going to try to make it. And then come back to you with.
So is your argument the city should pay?
Yeah, because I didn't pay for the switch before. The switch that's there is already
I
there.
just missed that part.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and look, the city's going to pay for it one way or the other. It's going to come out of our budget or some other budget. But my point would be this is an unanticipated expense in our budget. And either we go back to the city council and say, we need you to put this into, money into our budget, or figure out how else it could be paid for on some other kind of infrastructure.
Okay.
Okay? Any other questions on this?
I think we're good.
Okay, wanted to talk about the election day ballot order. So I've put in this slide the information that we started with, which was basically registered voters as of 8/26/24. That has been updated by the numbers you see in the earlier slides here. I did go ahead and update that so we wouldn't get too complicated. But note that the number was 57,000, it's now 58,000. So my suggestion is that whatever we do here, we aim a little high rather than aim low. We talked about in a previous meeting doing a ballot order at 90%. And so that's the calculation you see there, rounded out calculation on the second column from the, 1 2/3 column from the left. I went ahead and ordered half of that 90% for early voting. And that's the blue column you see down in the center there. I also just recorded here for our reference that we ordered presidential only ballots and federal only ballots, 50 per precinct, just so we had enough on hand. I can tell you that of those, we've used very few. You'll see the second column from the very right-hand side is how many we've used in the federal ballots, which is just a matter of, 2, 3, 4. And most of those are going to voters who are overseas. The other thing to be aware of is that I do have a number of voters overseas with FVCA applications who are getting an email now. So that means they get it emailed, they have to print it out, put all the paperwork in order, and then send that back to me via regular mail. But these are ones that have actually physically mailed the ballot out to the voter because that's the way they want to receive it. The ballots that we've used in early voting so far is the fourth column from the right. Ballots used as of 10/2/24. And this is basically just taken off the tape from every precinct that we do print out every day in early voting. And doing a little bit of math, the ballots on hand are there in the next column. So of what we had from the blue column over to the ballots on hand on 10/2, that is the kind of the result. I took those numbers and basically I kind of did a little bit of rounding and I got to the number on the far most right column. 2,400 is my estimate, getting us to that 90%. I rounded up a little bit for the precinct 1. You can go down the list and you can see what I've ordered, suggested for the rest of our ballot order for election day here. You'll notice a little red tag in 302. So if you just run your eye down that last column, you'll see I have a little red tag on 302. I actually calculated that one out at 125% all total. We've used very few of them. If you look at that row across, you'll see we've actually only used 3 of the ballots that we ordered in early voting because we don't have many students come down and early vote at the office. But I'm anticipating that we're going to have, maybe more than 100% of our, if we have a 5, I know we registered another 200 people, right? A change. So we're closer to 4,800 voters registered, although that includes inactives, actives and inactives as well. But we're gonna be closer to 48, and so I put down there a number that's about, for the total number of ballots we'll have will be about 125% of the registered voters.
Considering that half of those voters are inactive and a bunch of them have either moved off campus and are, well, they moved off campus in a different place, they have to go back on campus to vote, but a lot of them have just left the state and never bothered to
Yep.
unregistered. I mean, you could argue with me, you can make an argument with me to do 100%, but I don't think you can convince me we need to do more than 100% of the total number because of all of the absentee ballot, or the inactive voters. The other question that I've got, ballots used so far. Now, I know that we had a vendor send out a bunch of our absentee ballots,
Yes,
and the ones that the vendor sent those out in the first group, and then we have done absentees
Correct.
in-house using the ballots that we ordered already. So
Yes.
the ballots
Well,
used,
so, right, the in-house ones go from the ones we've ordered already, that's correct, yes.
okay, so is that included in the ballots used as of 10/2?
This is, ballots used as of 10/2 is actually only the ballots that we put in early voting. So there could be another column here with another set of ballots. I would say, just estimating, I think there's going to be an average of maybe 25 ballots per precinct. I'm trying to estimate a little bit high that we want out. And just, regular
Okay,
filling that up. I'll jump forward in just a minute if you want, because this is the number here for absentee packets. And this includes everything, including what the vendor had done and what oh, I'm sorry. There we go.
well,
So that's the total number we sent out, including the vendor plus what we've done.
at the moment, I'm just setting the stage here. I also know that a number of people to whom we send absentee ballots are going to show up and do provisional ballots because I lost it, I forgot it, or I'm bringing it in, spoil it so I can vote here. So I'm not sure that we need to take those and not count them for what we're going to need.
Right.
I'm just trying to make sure that I've got the stage set here so that I understand the whole parameters of what we're
For what it's worth, in previous elections, which there wasn't as much interest, I got about a 65% return rate on absentees. I'm anticipating that return rate is going to be higher than 65%. Well, not that it affects how many ballots we order, but just saying.
Doug, I think you're suggesting trimming some of this, like 302. But really, we're spending $7,500 on ballots. It's not going to save us that much from the next order.
I'm just trying to set the scene so I can see what I'm looking at. And that's why I asked, are the absentee ballots that we sent out from the office? Because the ones that were sent from the vendor are not included in our order, but the ones we send out from the office are a deduction against our order. And a lot of those are going to be spoiled because people will come in without them or whatever and vote in the precinct on a provisional, so they will end up using two ballots even though only one gets voted. So I'm just making sure that we've got all of that in here as we look at the total number we need to order in time for election day.
Well, are you having any readiness on things?
I still have questions about 3-2, but I'm not going to vote against it if nobody else has questions. Because it might be high, but as you say, I mean, 200 or 300, 400 ballots in a quarter, that's $100, right? Okay, like I said, I'm not going to vote against the total order because of that.
I'm just nervous about the 4,000 new students on campus. right? They probably won't all be voting, but I really would hate to have a call, like,
It's a big
3 o'clock, 3:02, and say, we're down to the last 10 ballots.
Yeah.
I think it would be a mistake to do that.
Yes, I know. I drove down to Richmond and watched the electoral board at that time explain why they ran out of ballots for the special election in January 2016. Not something I want to do.
Well, yeah, okay.
So this is at 90%. Basically, are you all good with the 90%? Just a tiny bit of juice on it, I rounded down. We've got, so it's a little, maybe it's 92%. We're trying to get
I
down.
think it makes a lot of sense what you've done. I'm ready with it.
Okay,
It's just a matter, if we have extra ballots, it's the room at the clerk's office.
yeah, the clerk won't like me because he's in another big closet, but,
They don't have an envelope.
yeah,
Yeah.
Envelope.
Any further discussion of this?
I'm ready to vote.
okay.
I don't think this is a.
Yeah, I mean, you can put it on the agenda and vote on it if you want, but I just want to make sure you guys are on board with it, right?
But if we don't have to vote, that's fine. I would have been ready to vote if we needed to.
Okay.
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 moving on.
Ongoing projects, most of the things you've seen on here before, I just update you on the ones that are updated. We do have a camera installation in progress. That's on the top right there. That's actually started. They've done nothing with the counter yet, so we'll have to keep chasing that. Other item, open items, I think you put on the agenda for me to give you a update on the page program, so I'll wait on that, but that's gonna be the official update that's up there. We still need, I think you have this on the agenda.
Backups.
Yeah, the backup, so that's on your agenda later. We have updated all the OVOs with new FES units. Just as a reminder, we will need to be doing, when we finish our LNA testing for election day of those units, we'll do one more piece of paperwork with that, which basically is an acceptance testing saying, hey, we've received it from the vendor, seems like it's all working okay, we'll sign off on that as well as the LNA testing. So we've done that with all the machines we've done.
So have we encountered any of the tracking problems that we were having with some of the ballots? Has that improved?
In terms of,
Are we running into problems with early voting with tracking?
recording voter credit? That's
With
right.
the ballot going through the machine, correct?
Oh, yeah, in other words, ballots are kicked back as being invalid because they have a timing mark problem, like that's what you're
That's the
asking.
timing.
So, we seemed like we had a number of those in 101, I think, and a couple in some other precincts. We haven't been having, they haven't, and we put them all in the right envelope for marking that, but we haven't had so much of that lately, so I think that's good. The vendor did tell me that they had some problems with printing, and they thought they didn't print ours until after they correct all that, but I think some of it was still in there.
Got some of
Yeah, we got someone that needed some help, so. But it didn't impact us significantly. Although, to your point though, actually, I didn't include those in the ones that that I marked in that ballot book. So
Yes, yeah.
It wasn't, there was, I would say there's probably not more than we had maybe 40 in one precinct. I think that was 101. And maybe another half a dozen spread across a couple of other precincts.
Right.
So I don't know that it was significant as long as we're, keeping order at 90% a little better.
Now, I think I heard you say yesterday that there was one of the FBS machines, the vendor was gonna have to come and do something. I
Yeah.
didn't fully catch what you said there.
Yeah, so when we were setting up to do our training for hands-on, I had set aside one machine to use as a demo machine, as you saw we used to train people on. That machine gave me errors and said, you have to do, a full calibration with some of the tools, pieces of paper that I don't have. And so I reached out to the vendor and said, hey, it's just giving me calibration errors. Can you tell me what has to happen? He said, well, you can't do that part. We have to do that for you. I said, okay, well, pick another machine and use that for your training, and then when we come out, we'll go do that. So I've set that aside. I've marked it as needing calibration. So
How many of the other machines might have that problem?
Well, Well, so here's the good news. The good news is the vendor's gonna come ready to fix the one machine, right? Whatever they have to bring with them to do that, they're gonna do that. And if we do LNA testing on another machine and it has that problem, they'll be standing right there to help fix that. right?
Well, we're going to be doing LNA on all of them.
Right, so the point is if any of the other ones have a problem, they're there to solve that problem.
Are you going to buy cots for us for?
Right.
I mean, you know, the LNA is 810 ballots, right? So it's not small, it's not.
Yeah.
We get 3 ballot styles per precinct, which is federal, presidential, so it's not a small balance. Although, because we're doing only one precinct per machine, it will make it a little better. We would really have the heaviest load getting Capricorn because Capricorn do all the precincts. Right, so, but it's still a little bigger load than you normally would do for reality testing.
When is that scheduled for?
The 22nd of October. Okay, let me see, what else on here is something, oh, we're gonna talk about the poll books a little bit in a few minutes. We've pended off, I think, 301 location system, we've closed out some of the other items we had on our agenda. I think the last one, just to mention, is we've got a full clearance as an emergency precinct for relocation for 304. And that will have to be essentially renewed and turned into a permanent relocation. I have all the paperwork now that will allow it to be approved as a permanent. I have all the Attorney General's letter and all that good stuff.
Do you have, or, well, I know we have to put signs of compassion,
Yes.
send them down to Heritage. You've got a new sign order in the works?
Yes, in order to put that compassion, we've
Okay,
ordered signs that we stick on the ground, we can put them right out in front, so as people come in, and we'll put another one, at the door. I think I've got 4 signs to just put there, so as they
Yeah,
come in.
okay. And I heard a rumor that some of our signs from last time, some of the big sales signs, they need some repair.
Yeah, so we have to do that inventory. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but I will try and do that. Normally I send out to the equipment technicians a list of things that they're gonna be putting at the precincts. In previous elections, we've had, for example, a couple of voting booths per precinct will probably be pumping that up, right? So they have a bunch of it storage.
Yeah.
So if I told them they needed 4 last time, they might need 6 this time, right? So
I guarantee you will.
you understand what I'm saying? So I don't know what the exact numbers are. I'm gonna look at it for precinct, and then we'll send them that. And that, the signage also, like we put last time, will be on that list of things they have. I will try to do an inventory for any repaired or need to replace the signs. I may come back and have to replace some of these signs.
Yeah, if Julie can, get one of those Google map things of Heritage, we can sit down and figure out exactly where the signs need to go. So
Okay, right, we do have that, yes, okay, okay. Cool. I think that's the only thing that's on here that's of interest right now. Any other questions? Okay, just a couple of reminders for everybody. Last day to register to vote is October 15th for this election. Same day registration will start the next day. That means if you did not register by the 15th, you can still vote in early voting, but you will be voting provisional, and Electoral will need to adjudicate your ballot in canvas. Last day to apply for an absentee ballot is October 25th. Please don't wait if you want an absentee ballot, otherwise you have very little chance in the mail of getting it back in time. As of October 1st, I have 2151 voters in early voting, and also 3950 absentee packets sent to voters. That includes the ones that are given by vendor and the ones that were given in the office.
Very good.
And that is all that I have to share on that.
Thank you, Dan. Is there any follow-up motion on the registrar report?
I don't know that we need to make a motion to accept anything because you're basically making your report and hasn't brought us anything that needs our approval.
Shall we move on to old business and the update on the AIDS program?
Sure. To a very quick update, we actually have got some traction on this at this point. We have 9 people who have agreed to be a part of that. We have a training Cheston coming out. I have to look at my calendar myself, what date it is, but that's coming out soon. And we will be signing the precincts. Hopefully we'll get some more. We've told all of them to invite their friends. So we'll see if we can get a few more there. Ideally, we would love to have one per precinct, but in the event that we don't, you all have to decide, you know, where we assign the pages. And that will, I think, coordinate with your election officer assignments, considering, you know, precincts that might need someone at the door to look at something or whatever.
And how, how long can their shift be? They're limited.
Oh, I don't know, that's a good question.
I know,
Okay,
I know.
okay,
I
tell me.
talked to Julie yesterday. They can either sign up for the whole day, 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. or later, and one has. And otherwise they can work half a day, start at 5, work half a day, or come at noonish and they'll stay.
I put in a plug for a page at St. Paul's. because of
I
that.
think that Julie thinks so, that, and I probably agree that they should probably be assigned in pairs.
Well, then,
Yeah.
Although it can't get them to work the same shift, though.
St. Paul's has that cumbersome.
So it's like First Christian is. It's, you know,
Okay, good. Well, congratulations.
your precinct is kind of like that too, isn't it? Isn't the, are you gonna be in the gym again?
No, we're gonna be in the
Back in the
cafeteria. No, we're gonna be in the cafeteria.
Just off the 4 year.
So, Dan, it'd be useful if the newspapers were alerted about the page program.
So I had Mark Hand did write an article about that. So I'm going to, I did ask him to maybe write a follow-up article. So I will talk to Julie, have her pass some information. And see if we can follow up.
Do we know what radio stations the students listen to?
Do they listen to the radio?
I guess they don't.
TikTok,
Yeah,
That's right, they're straight.
good TikTok videos. But
that's what Peter was.
sound like you guys volunteered to make a TikTok.
Well, Peter, if you want any pages at your precinct,
You'll make your own TikTok video.
Okay, anything further on the page program?
my only thought is it's a start. It's a good start. And I think once we get it going, hopefully our numbers will increase election over election.
Sure. And get good publicity.
Yeah.
Let's move on to new business. Dan, would you tell us about the no?
So we have on the phone with Dan Peters, and I'm going to turn it over to him. I don't know, Dan, if I can put your video onto the other screen. Maybe I can. Yeah, there you are. Okay. I don't know if I can make this full screen, a little bit bigger. You can see us okay, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And what I have, I printed for them this knowing full pad one pager that you gave me. So if do you need to share screen? Is that what gives something to share if I turn over share screen to you or?
Yes, I have a short presentation and then also the ability to walk through our PullPad application and system that I can display if I can share the screen.
Okay. I'm sorry, what was your question?
His name.
Yeah, this is Dan. You can introduce yourself, Dan Peters.
Hi, I am Dan Peters. I'm the National Account Director for Knowing and the PullPad system. Thank you all for having me today. And I am sorry that our Virginia account manager, who lives in Southern Virginia, was unable to make it in person today. She was severely affected by the storms from the hurricane. So she's actually been, I guess, paling water out of her house for the past 2 days. So we wanted to have someone on site, and again, apologize we couldn't get her up there today. So today, if it's, I'm not sure, is there a time frame, Dan, that we have on this? I want to be respectful.
How long what their attention span is, so they can tell you what that is.
Fair enough. And if that's the case, what I'd like to do is give you sort of a brief presentation on who we are as a company, and then walk through I would say the election officer experience, what the poll workers see on election day with our product. Does that sound amenable to everybody?
Yep, I'm just trying to figure out how to let you share your screen.
Well, I have an option here, so let me see.
Yeah, you can request
I can
it, maybe that'll pop up on my screen.
Are you all able to see that? It says
No.
it's
Let me stop sharing. Let me see, I have to stop sharing. Can you read that? Sorry, this is hard because I have it on both sides here. Sorry about the technical challenges here. Trying to get this sorted out. If I kill that, it's gonna kill the whole meeting, right? I don't want to do that. Let me. The PowerPoint may be holding it open. Let me see if I can get back to
And I'm sorry, what's your name again?
It's Dan Peters,
Yeah,
P-E-T.
yeah, that
Two names.
explains it.
Sorry, it's so
Okay.
confusing, yeah. I'm gonna kill that.
Yeah, and your last initials are both P. Yeah, Peters and Pence. No wonder I'm confused. So these are basically on tablets like well, it's not necessarily an iPad, but an iPad type device that you provide.
It is actually an iPad, yes.
Okay,
But we are a certified business partner with Apple.
okay.
All of our units are iPads. That is what we utilize.
And there's this, I guess, a custom stand that comes with it that
That is correct.
the system. And on this picture, I see a wire going into the side. I don't know whether that's for power or.
Yeah, so what you're seeing there is a hard line into a thermal printer. The thermal printer is optional, but a lot of our localities do utilize it, especially for primaries where it can display the party to make sure they get the correct ballots.
Okay.
While we're working on this, how about I share a little bit about myself and
Okay, yeah.
myself.
Now try and share if you can.
All right. It says it is showing. Can you see it?
Yes, I can now. Okay.
Well, you can't, but the screen.
Well, I know. I see it here. Let me see if I can get it back up on there.
Very fortunate.
Let me see if I can put this on screen two.
Dan Peters, I guess
Yeah.
my question was, we use a Merlin system that's
There we
a
go.
LAN, a very local area for connecting our poll books now. Does your system have something similar? Or is it all be hardwired?
Well, let me address that question because it is something that is unique to us. It is not something similar. We actually feel like, to be blunt, election officers should not be IT technicians. So there is no need, the way our system's been developed, for any sort of third, I want to say third party, but party system in the middle to direct traffic. So our developers have worked with Apple to utilize the Wi-Fi antenna. Very different here. It's not Wi-Fi. It's the antenna using Apple's mesh network inherent on each poll pad to communicate the same way in a local area network without the need of any additional equipment.
Okay.
So a little bit about Knowing. We are nationwide. We are the largest electronic poll book vendor in the country. So our poll pad system, which we're going to be showing today, is currently used in 29 states plus the District of Columbia. Our total voter suite, which includes our voter registration system, election night reporting, and other poll worker modules, things like that, we're in 36 states. Of the hardware we're going to be talking about today, we're in 1,800 plus jurisdictions with 122,000 poll pads deployed, and that number is actually a little low because this was created 6 months ago. In the state of Virginia, again, this was created prior to June. For the primary elections, we supported 48 localities, a total of 6,000 plus poll pads, with 3.2 plus million registered voters supported in the June primary. We are now up to 65 localities, with 62 of them using us for this presidential election. So almost half of the localities in the state will be using our system. To give you an idea in regard to the reliability of the product, on election day for the primary election, we had 12 phone calls. That's 12 phone calls across 6,000 pads and 48 localities. In general, why No Inc? I'm not going to read line for line, just to give you the highlights. From my opinion, we are a company that is founded by election officials, designed for election officials and poll workers alike. I myself have been in the election industry for 20 years at this point, starting as a poll worker, then working for my local county before moving to No Inc 8 years ago. Of our employees, 70% of them come from an election office in some capacity. You spoke about the Apple system. We did decide to go with the Apple system for the security pieces. So we have the most secure code platforms. We develop everything within the United States. There is no outsourcing of any resources. And just to be honest, we are in process to be the first federally certified poll book by the EAC. So we're hoping to have at minimum a conditional certification by the end of the year. Our commitment to security, I believe, I would say, is second to none. We have a CSO officer who came over from the FBI cybersecurity team. We have 30 developers in-house. We do quarterly penetration tests, meet with CISA and Homeland Security. And we are the only poll book vendor that is SOC 2 certified for data retention and the way we administer our accounts. Speaking of when I spoke about 70% of our client support and team being from the election industry, we have found that hiring people who have been on the front lines in the election offices, either as a GR or as a deputy or poll workers or the election IT team, when you guys have issues, we have tended to have either seen them or can relate to them based on what our experience is. And I will say we have an incredibly dedicated team. Especially Kelly in Virginia is a former general registrar who I have to tell her to stop working. Like I said, she is literally, her entire house is flooded. And she's like, I'm going to try and hop on this call. I was like, Kelly, please take care of your house first. So just want to stress that I feel like our election industry experience is second to none. Our product suites that we're not going to show today, but I did want to at least touch on. What you see here, when you see that big box, the poll print station, we do offer a ballot printing solution that works seamlessly with our check-in device. This is deployed all across Virginia at this point. We have some localities that have found it so reliable during early voting, they're rolling it to precinct-wide election day. So opposed to having pre-printed ballots, they're actually printing ballots on election day for voters to save cost.
Can I interrupt and ask a question about the
Absolutely, anytime you want.
the ballots that you print? Are they the full-size ballots or are they the narrower ones? Like
They are full face ballots. So we can do full face ballots anywhere from 12 to 22 inches duplex.
Okay, and do they work with all of the machines that are approved for use in the state?
Yes, sir.
Scanners.
Just out of curiosity, which tabulation system do you use?
We use ESL.
Yes, so that'd be Unison, correct?
Yes, Unison product, that's correct.
Yep. So as of 2 years ago, we are fully compatible with Unison. We have multiple Unison actually users in the state of Virginia. The issue previously was edge to edge. The Unison system needed the ballot tick marks to go within a millimeter of the edge. But with our new printer, and we have a dedicated printing team that comes from Oki, if you're familiar with that, that was the standard for ballot printing until they decided to leave the country, basically. So we hired their staff to administer our system, and they were able to develop a proprietary firmware for ours that go edge to edge with Unison ballots.
Thank you.
The poll pad stand, which the picture that you saw. So what you see here is after getting feedback from thousands of poll workers and election officers, our previous system, you take out of the case and assemble. We opted to move forward with an all-in-one design. We're opposed to have to putting anything together. You lift it out, you plug it in, and you're good to go. Those are the steps. We also opted to go away from a Bluetooth connection to the printer because that is, let's be honest, bad optics. Someone walks into a poll site, they turn on their Bluetooth, they see Star Micronics printer, and they start saying, I can quote unquote hack your system. So we moved away from Bluetooth. That's where you see that cord coming out is a direct connection to the Bluetooth printer. And then that printer is plugged in and charges the poll pad all day with pass-through. Any questions on the unit itself?
The poll pad in this printer, this is a ballot card printer, right?
So in this scenario, this prints out what we call a check-in receipt, which depending on, and the printer is optional. We do have other setups. Like we have what we sort of jokingly call the Chick-fil-A case, which is a case that looks like you went to Chick-fil-A and they hold it on their hand. But we do have just a single point where it doesn't flip to allow the voter to view anything. So we do have different options. This is just our standard offering. So if you want to have a discussion on the other options that we have, we're more than happy to do it. The printer is optional. It just, again, will print out proof that a voter checked in, similar to this, and we'll see some as we go through. We have found that, again, in today's climate, having a paper verification that the voter was processed tends to alleviate some concerns for different poll watchers and the like.
The voter's going to turn that paper in for a ballot, right?
What was that, sir?
The voter's going to turn that paper in to get a ballot.
That is correct. Yep. We jokingly call it ticket for the ride. For every one of these that it's in a pile, there should be a ballot that went out and there should be no discrepancy.
Just out of curiosity, there are hand scanners that are intended, we don't use them, but they're intended to scan the back of somebody's driver's license to automatically pull them up in the system. Does this have that type of a capability if we decided ever that we wanted to go that way?
Short answer is yes, and you're actually going to see that today.
Okay.
So the other thing that we probably will not get into today too deep is our backend system, ePulse. This is how you build the election. It's how you set everything up. And then during early voting, if you're utilizing our system, can monitor everything remotely. I know basically every electronic poll book vendor has their own version of this. If I'm correct for you, Daniel, with I think Demtech probably have some version of like a command central or something like that.
We don't use that for Demtech. Demtech,
Okay.
whatever they're offering in that space, we've never used. It's
Gotcha.
always local.
It was always what?
We always build our poll book locally, and deploy it locally, it never goes out in the cloud.
Okay. So I will tell you right now, just to make sure that everybody, just full clarity, our system is cloud-based with ePulse. Okay, so I just want to be upfront with you.
Yeah.
It is a cloud-based system. So we can talk about it a little bit more, but I do want to show you the poll book if you guys are still open to seeing that number.
Keep going, because I have a couple of questions, based on my interaction with some other people or users that maybe help, we'll sort through that.
Okay. This is the entire system that we're going to see today out of its case, each component. So you have the printer power cords, the iPad with the printer in stand. You have a spare cable in case there's any issues, a roll of thermal paper, 2 styluses, and that is the entire setup. What you can't see here is, and I'm going to pull it off the back of my unit. Opposed to having a handheld scanner, we actually built in using the iPad back camera to scan a license. We are the only poll book vendor that can actually, this is a weird thing that we did that I think is pretty cool. We're the only poll book vendor that can actually have a stand to hold the ID, so poll workers don't have to try and do anything. They set the ID in and it scans automatically based on the barcode on the back. So we patented the stand arm, as we call it. All right. Any additional questions sort of about the hardware before I show you the software side of it?
I've seen that hardware demo from another registrar, and it basically just, it snaps onto the back, and the voter, when they come up at the station, they just drop their license in the little holder, like he says, and then it scans it, and pulls it up in the front, and essentially lets you know, just leave it off that. Leave it off that. That's all it was.
Okay. Yeah,
All right.
we'll move to software.
Let me share a different screen with you. My mouse, I can't see my mouse, so this is getting very interesting.
Yeah, I've had seeing the mouse on this too. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm just trying to navigate to share a screen without a mouse.
Oh, your mouse is in
There you
the
go,
upper
okay.
right-hand corner.
Well, that's my mouse. The
So that's your
problem is-
mouse?
Problem is, it's my mouse, so you.
Oh.
I'll get my mouse out of the way in case.
Use your arrow key to go to the next slide, should work.
Yeah, I think it was to change slides and change presentation, so.
Oh, yeah.
That's-
that'll help.
Let me.
You can, if you want to unshare and reshare, maybe that's a better way to do it. I don't know if you can unshare without seeing the mouse.
That's why I'm going for the stop share button right now. But hey, thank you for letting me show that presentation.
Maybe I can knock your share down.
Yeah, can you unshare me? This is quarter line. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never not had a mouse here. Escape. There we go.
More Cheetos.
Hey, I figured it out. I was able to escape finally. And let's go to. All right. Can you guys see just the poll pad screen right now? Can you see that?
Yes.
City of Lynchburg demo?
Yep.
Okay.
So, one of the big differences I would say, and this again is based on my limited knowledge of the other poll books in your space, is that there is no need to plug in anything at the beginning of the day by the poll workers. The poll pads are set up, assigned to the polling place at the office before they go out, so you can test them and make sure that everything is properly loaded. They then should be, this is our recommendation, locked into what we call a single app mode, which allows you to only work within our application. They're not able to exit and do anything. When they plug in the poll pad, it automatically turns on the iPad and should launch them to this screen if you're following our recommendations. From here, we would tell the poll workers to make sure the data is correct correct locality, correct election. As you can see, the last time I demoed this was in July and I forgot to update the date. I updated the name, I just missed the date. And then correct location. So this is sample polling place 2. We also recommend highly that they do a test print. So if you see the green printer in the top right, I can select that, print a test receipt, and then that verifies that all of our equipment is operational prior to polls opening. From there, I like to think it's pretty simple. If I were to ask a poll worker right now who's never seen our system, what do you think you need to do to get started? They're going to answer, press get started. And we get 2 options. We can scan a barcode. And by the way, this is just our standard demo, license, and manual entry IDs. There is a customizable one for Virginia that displays samples of what is legal in the state of Virginia. From here, the most common usage of our system in the Commonwealth is to scan a barcode. Every page, we try and keep things simple. So we have 2 options. We can scan a barcode or do a manual entry. I'm going to tap scan barcode. Finds the barcode on my license and pulls me up. From here, the voter always has to do their confirmation if there's multiple people that come up, because Daniel Peters is a pretty common name. And if there's 2 Daniel Peters in that precinct that happen to be born in 1985, it will display both, because it's searching only on the name and the date of birth. This allows it to not capture any additional information. We are not capturing anything on a scan. It's just a speed lookup through the book. As you can see here, it does display my last name and my first name, then my year of birth per Virginia election law, my registered address. We can also display mailing address, my voter ID on the right, where I should be voting on election day. As you can tell, sample polling place 2, that's where I am. Then the precinct I'm assigned to, and the ballot style I would be receiving. Once I tap on that record, we make it nice and big. So the whole goal here is it's like magnifying glass, easier to see, easier to read. Typically, this is where a poll worker would ask a qualifying question. Every locality is slightly different on what they want to ask, but they have to confirm the voter. So, Dan, what street do you live on? I would say 2122 Egret Circle. That may be enough for some localities. Others may say you need to get them the full address and they must repeat it correctly. I'm not here to set standard like policy, just saying this is the normal confirmation stage. From here, we tap accept in the top right. And if you notice, every page is designed to only have the minimum necessary amount of buttons to either advance or go back. We found that color-coded and consistent and minimizing it helps poll workers, because we know the average poll worker age is 74 in the United States. We tap accept in the top right. It moves to the final page where we have options, and these really are informational tags. I know a lot of our localities ask us to turn off challenge voter, but we have to have it on in demos and whenever we work with the state as an option. Assistance required, same thing. If they request assistance, we can flag it. If this is a curbside voter, we also have the ability to flag it here. If there was a need, we can also mark them provisional on the bottom. Those 4 buttons I just talked about, challenge, assistance, curbside, provisional, you have the ability to hide them if you want or display them. And when I say you, I mean, this is something that we have designed that whoever's the administrator of your account, can do this without having to pick up a phone and call us once we teach you how.
Question,
Oh, yep, go ahead.
can you put a custom category in addition to challenge curbside assistance required?
We do have space for one more, yes.
Yeah, I mean, so in addition to the provisional, or can you do a total of 4 or total of 5?
Total of, so take provisional out of it because that's on the bottom banner. Underneath assistance required and to the right of curbside, we can put one more checkbox.
Okay, and we can customize that if we need something.
Yep.
Because we have an extra one on ours now, I'm just curious.
Yeah, you could do that. That is correct.
Thanks.
Another thing I'll point out, when you look at the top right now, we have start over and submit. We have a stopgap in place. So if a poll worker accidentally hits the wrong button, it's not going to take them back right away. We want to be able to, at this point, say, are you sure that we are not moving forward? But typically poll workers are going to hit the blue button. That's what they're trained to do. If everything's good, you hit the blue button. And the voter is checked in. In this scenario, we are using the printer. So I have a receipt that I printed off, and I can send a picture of this, Dan, later if you like via email.
Sure, that'd be great.
This is 100% customizable in our backend system. You can remove, add anything you would like. So on this one, I have the name of the election, the name of the polling site, the voter's name, voter's address, ID number, date, and timestamp of when they checked in. If it was a primary, it would display the voter's party, then the ballot style they are to receive, and then put a barcode on the bottom because we do have some localities that want to be able to go through and scan these if they need to. Let's say the poll book had an issue. Again, 12 issues out of 6,000 in the primary. So I would say very, very few times that occurs. They need to be able to scan a record to verify it in their backend system. That right there is what we would call a perfect check-in. Our average check-in time in the state of Virginia is about 12 to 14 seconds.
Can I get you to clarify one thing?
Absolutely.
Talking about dual primaries, I heard you say that you can do that. Where on the screen do we record which primary they want to vote in?
So this is set up for, a general. So what I can do is once we get to the next point on the next voter, I'll say this is where there's basically a screen. Let me just pull up George Washington. We'll go through it. Find that typically easier. So manual entry, as you can see, I tapped on that. And we have a last name and a first name box, as well as a keyboard that appears. Our standard search parameters are 3 letters in each box, though you can do as much or as little as you like. If you want to just put W and then GEO, you could. If you want to put just WG, you could. Once I hit search, it pulls up our voter. Again, we have that information present. From here, we would verify it's the correct Mr. Washington. Once I hit accept, in a primary, a new screen will appear that has whatever choices you have available. Typically, it's just a Republican or Democrat, dual primary. But let's say the Green Party garnered enough votes that now they have a primary ballot or something of that like. It's customizable, but it will display the options that they have. If you are doing a single primary, it will then just bypass that screen and assign them to the primary that's available. Does that make sense?
So you click accept and then the next screen comes up, which one do you want?
That is correct.
Before it goes to this screen.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. So again, we just went through with Mr. Washington. We're at our final page. I'm going to check curbside just so you can see what it does is it just gives us a check mark. And if I hit submit, It's going to be very hard to see, but we can adjust the font if you wanted it larger. We do have the word curbside on the receipt. Some counties just want it small and out of the way, but we can also, this is small, we have medium and large as well. But that's what we call a flag. So on this receipt, we know that this was a curbside voter. All right. I have a few more voter examples that I want to show you, and then be glad to continue answering any questions. Or if you have a question, just, let me know. I don't mind. I prefer back and forth opposed to me just droning on. Looking up Mr. Andrew Jackson in this case, and here he is inactive. So we like to do color coding. Perfect voters, there is zero color to it, it's just a blank background. Inactive, we put yellow, sort of a soft stop. Then our absentees are going to be red. That's sort of a bigger full-on stop. Now, here's also something else that I believe is unique to us. When I click on Andrew Jackson's name, and by the way, these colors are completely customizable. You can change them. We actually can do Pantones. So if you don't like our generic color choices and you want to go a certain shade, we can on the back end program that in for you. So Jackson here, Andrew Jackson here, we get our first prompt. So this system has these customizable prompts that you can put in as much as you would like. It's like a little minor training video for the, not video, but training prompt for the poll workers. So whenever I train poll workers on site, I always tell them to read before you proceed. If you read before you proceed, you will succeed every single time, because you can program this up to tell them exactly what to do. On the right-hand side, we have 3 buttons for this situation. We can have up to 6, and we can create custom branched workflows. So we can set this up to act however you would like. So if we were to say, you're unable to verify the address, now Andrew Jackson might go provisional, right? But let's say they followed everything to the T, they filled out the form, everything is good to go. We can do signed affirmation of eligibility, and we get to still move through and check in Mr. Jackson. Any questions on sort of the first prompt that you've seen?
No, okay, we're good.
All right. For the sake of time, I'm not going to finish the check-in for every single voter. I think you guys get it. You get to a final page, you can check a box or not, and then hit submit. Our next voter is Mr. Abe Lincoln. Well, Abraham. Nicknames will catch you off sometimes. Abraham Lincoln. He is a absentee ballot issued voter. Again, we have this red tone that's sort of supposed to jump out at the poll worker. We tap on the record, we read before we proceed. And these are just some of our generic options that we have in here. Sort of want to show you that we can fill up the screen, put in many workflows as you want. So if they complete the affidavit, you can move forward, close, goes back. Maybe they refuse to surrender the ballot, or they just don't have it and they don't want to fill out the affidavit, then it's provisional. But let's say they just came in, they have everything ready, they just want to vote in person. Ballot surrendered. Now, I like to show this because you have the option. Do you want a password here that the chief has to put in to make sure that they verify the paperwork and everything is good? Some localities want the password, others just want them to move forward. Any questions on our absentee issued voter? Okay. Our next voter is going to be a marked voter. Martin Van Buren. But I also like to take a step back whenever I look up Martin Van Buren, because this is our first example with 2 different voters. So every single search in our system is a locality-wide search. So there's no toggle to say if I'm looking precinct or am I looking global. Every single search is locality-wide. We have found that by doing this, there are less mistakes from poll workers who just forget to flip the switch and think they're not in the correct polling site. So for Marcy Van here, we see that, yes, she is an absentee ballot issued voter, but also she's at the wrong location. And it tells us she should be at sample polling location 3, which is the First Baptist Church. Now, I'm going to show you something that right now we cannot do in the state of Virginia, but I don't want to do too deep in it. So you can basically ignore the map and the directions. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, we can't actually text and send you this location and show you where they're going. But in the top left, the polling place, the directions, and the precinct, or the address and the precincts we can show. And we can actually print this. I'm going to fold back the part that you won't see. We can actually print it as a little slip that you can hand to the voter to direct them to their correct polling place. So they can walk out, type it into their phone or GPS, or go home to their computer and type it in MapQuest and print off 7 pages, whatever works for them. So I just want to show you the wrong location voter, how that looks. For Martin Van Buren, it's pretty simple. Can't move forward without a provisional. Marked voter, we know that's actually been returned to the office. We're going to give them the option of provisional if you want to on the poll pad, or we just hit close and go back. I would say that 90% of localities, especially the smaller ones, do not use the provisional feature on the poll book. Some of the larger ones do. I like it because it allows you to track why you have a provisional. So I'll actually check in Martin provisionally. So see how it keeps provisional across the top? It's provisional across the top. When I check them in, provisional across the top. And our checking count does not go up because this does not go into the scanners. So we've checked in myself and George Washington. That's 2 check-ins if you look in the top middle. But we did also process a provisional. So it's a quick rundown of our voter scenarios. What questions you all have for me?
I have a couple of questions, but I'll let you go first if you want.
Either way, I've got 2.
Okay, we'll go to you too. That's fine.
We have a thing on the poll book we're using now where it flags the poll worker to look for a senior, a junior, the third, to make sure they're clicking on the right one. Is that something that works with yours?
I'm not sure what by flag. I mean, what we
In the DemTech system, they on the bottom of the screen, they'll put a series of potential flags. Like it'll say if it recognizes that there's a same name but there's a junior senior, it will actually put a little warning button down at the bottom to say make sure this person is the junior or the senior, whichever is the correct vote.
So I will say we do not have the ability to display that flag across the bottom. This is how a junior and senior would be displayed in a list mode.
Okay.
And again, that's also why we have the second screen with the giant, when you're confirming the voter, it's a lot larger and you see the junior as well as the address and date of birth.
Okay. The other question is on that first page where you have the automatic lookup, this page, yeah, and manual entry. Basically, if you go to manual, the illustration above where it says manual entry, does that give a list of all of the eligible types of IDs and whether, if it does, is there a way to indicate which of those IDs they used, or is that just a list of the eligible IDs?
So this is just an image that we can customize to whatever you would want to display there. Our generic one shows the most commonly used ones in the Commonwealth. And then on the left-hand side, it shows what you can actually scan with our scanner. So it breaks them up by what is scannable versus what is not. And I think it displays between the two sections, going off the top of my head here, but it's something like 10 different, the 10 most common IDs used in the Commonwealth.
Okay,
And it's just a display to show in case the poll worker is not sure and they have a military ID in front of them, they can look at the screen and go, oh, military IDs are acceptable. But I would still always stress that, I mean, listen, I work for a tech company. Technology is great. I love it. But there's still a human element to this. That's why the state provides you, I'm pretty sure, an image library, a poster, something that says these are acceptable. When I train poll workers on this, I say, we're going to give you a shortcut, but it's still your job, if you're not sure, to check with the chief officer to do your verification. Big trust but verify. And even when I'm talking about our system, Demtechs, ESNSs, whomever's, poll workers should be trained to, not just go and trust it 1,000%. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, other questions? Okay. So like you mentioned, the majority of poll workers are retirement age, shall we say. And one of the feedbacks I've gotten from some of them is that they're not as excited about a non-tactile keyboard. So for example, when using a poll pad or using a touch screen of whatever kind, you have a keyboard that's on the screen. Is there any option to actually have a physical keyboard with the system?
No, I'm gonna give you a very short answer. No, because that would be, we don't connect an external anything to the iPad. I mean, that gives vulnerabilities when you're talking about, Bluetoothing a keyboard in.
Right. Yeah, understood. Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to ask a question.
I would say, talk to some of your neighbors that have us, ask about their poll worker experience. And I'm pretty sure, you're going to get positive feedback, even though it is a touchscreen.
Yeah, I've had some initial conversations and I'll have some follow-ups with them after this. So if we weren't using the printer with this iPad system, the submit would just not print the receipt, correct?
Can you?
If we weren't using the printer with the system, right, you would just hit submit and it would just record that, but it wouldn't print a receipt, right? That's how that would work if you didn't have the printer.
That is correct. One of the things that we also recommend when using our system, whether you have the printer or not, is we have the ability to, obviously it flashes that screen that says success, but you can't hear it. There's also a chime that indicates that you checked them in successfully. Some poll workers like to turn that down. I suggest lock it at max volume because you train them so that way you need to see the screen and hear a ding, right? Then you did your job. With the printer setup, it's see the screen, hear the ding, get the receipt. But there are instances where poll workers hit the wrong button. They get the pop-up that says, are you sure you want to start over? They freak out because they're nervous. I mean, you train them maybe twice a year, to be honest. I mean, that's the standard is there's a primary training for poll workers and a general election training for poll workers. And then they're off on their own. And when something pops up, it scares them. They hit yes, oh my God, it's back at the screen and they go, oh, it must have worked. So I trained very much on the visual and audio cues to know that you were successful.
My next question is about user level permission. So I noticed that there's no login of any kind with this system. That means we don't know, you don't identify the poll worker that's actually working on that poll book. That particular, before I say poll pad, is what I'm trying to say, poll pad. So if you change workers throughout the day, the only identification you have of who is checked in a particular voter is that particular poll pad, right? There's no additional user level authentication.
So that is completely up to you. Right
Okay.
now, I'm showing you basically what is the minimum version of Virginia. Like this meets their certification standards. Should you choose, we can do a login. We can do a single pin that's global. So you can have, tell all of your chief officers, here's your login. Open the poll book. You can have it to where you have dual primary, like dual party logins. So Republican and Democratic, like two nuclear key logins to the poll book. You can have individual poll worker logins. You would have to go in and basically we'd load all your poll workers into our backend system, and then they would get assigned their own password and their own login. Or some have found the compromise. We can put an initial box on that final check-in screen. So whichever poll worker's checking in the voter, they put their initials there. And then that's stored with that check-in. So you could look at it, say John Smith was checked in and you see DP. You look at the poll worker list and you know it was Dan Peters because I'm the only DP there.
Except for Dan Pence.
Yeah, unless you're working there. In which case you might want to say, all right, you have to put
GAP.
the name. They put the middle initial. Please tell me your middle initial does not start with J.
Right.
All
Yeah,
right.
we're good. We're good. So follow-up question on that though. Talking about a user level login, they're not user level permissions, however, right? Or do you provide for that as well? In other words, the reason I ask that question is because some of the questions that are on the screen that you showed us were questions that probably in our model right now, we would tell the poll worker, don't worry about that, don't deal with that, send it to the chief. Chief will have the ability to actually just process, the provisional or whatever other, exception cases. And the, poll worker would just go back to the other screen. In some cases, they don't even see in our system right now, some of the other options. And only the chief actually gets to see some of those options. So user level permissioning is one of the questions.
So not a user level in the sense of when you log in, it gives X amount of permissions. But if you have a station, so the chief has their own poll book, we can program that poll book to display different information than the standard check-in poll book.
Okay.
That's how that's normally done in localities that want to do, have it say, please refer to chief. And then they go to the chief's line and the chief has every option available at their poll book. And then they process the voter right there.
Right, but it would be assigned to a particular poll book, not a user, right? So you'd say, let's say for a poll pad, I'm sorry, I would say. So let's just say I had 4 poll pads at a particular precinct. I would have poll pad 1, 2, and 3. That would be for a regular election officer. I would say my poll pad 4, I've now assigned to have additional permissions. So to be on that poll pad, not per user, but per poll pad.
That is correct.
Okay. Can we talk about the cloud for just a minute? So talking to some other registrars, they tell me that they use the cloud to manage their data up and down from the cloud to upload it to Verus every day because we have to, give voter credit to Verus. So at the beginning of the day, they'll download the file from Verus. They will upload that into your cloud. They will run the whole day, with the cloud, keeping the updates, capturing all the updates. And then at the end of the day, they will again download a file. They'll upload that into Verus. And now Verus has an accurate record of what was done on the poll pads at that, early voting location during the day. Am I describing that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay. And one of the questions I would have is, how are the poll pads connected to the internet? What's the process for that? Because if it's on the cloud, they're going through the internet.
So that, again, it's going to be based on locality. We do, as part of our certification in the state, basically we use Meraki's mobile device management system on the back end. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but we pre-programmed.
That's fine. Go ahead.
So we pre-program any SSIDs that they are going to be using. Some localities will do a dedicated SSID for the poll books only. Others use their general Wi-Fi because all of our data is encrypted, end to end. Others will use what we call like a cradle point or a dedicated hotspot for that. But basically, we set it to where it cannot connect to anything but the prescribed SSIDs.
Okay, so it uses a standard Wi-Fi SSID, but you can select what SSID you're going to use, and you can do whatever security management you want to do around that SSID within the context of your locality.
Yes.
I think the one registrar I was talking to had arranged with their locality to have an SSID that was on a VPN that was, dedicated for just this purpose. That's my recollection. I may go back and talk to them a little bit about that. I understand on election day, however, you don't connect to the internet, but that's how they said they were doing it. They would do the whole work within the poll book, set of poll pads rather, at that locality. And then at the end of the, vote election day, they would bring back, they would download from one of those into some place and then be able to upload that into, or take that and put it into Veris.
So it depends so this again is going to be a locality specific sort of decision. So we have what we call an iSync, which is basically a proprietary device that's programmed to only recognize our app that plugs in through the lightning port. That they could take basically like you said, the election day activity, load it onto that, and then plug it into their computer and upload it to our system. That's how a handful do it. The other option is you bring the poll pad itself back to your office either the next day or that evening, and you can upload via the Wi-Fi once it's outside the polling site. So it depends on how you want to go about that process.
Okay. And the rubric is that the polling places will not have Wi-Fi that those poll pads could connect to, because you don't want that to be happening.
That is correct.
Okay. Do you guys have other questions? That's most of my questions.
Yeah, currently, what we've instructed our election officers, if we lose power so that the Merlin can't connect, they just all need to go to one poll book and just use that until they can start talking to each other. So if you lose power and you're going to the batteries on your poll books, are they still talking to each other so long as the batteries are up? And how long do the batteries last?
So first question, will they still communicate? Absolutely. That's why we don't want, we prefer not to have a third party, a Merlin in the middle. If you really wanted to, we can do that. But we prefer not to. So yes, they communicate again it's called the Apple Bonjour Mesh Network. So it's an Apple proprietary encrypted network that's how they see each other, and that's how they recognize each other. If the power goes out, as long as the iPad has battery to it, they're good to go. As to the battery question, I'm going to give you two answers because I like to be 100% honest. Apple's official rating is 8 to 10 hours. If you're in the middle of a busy day, right? You're talking, it's election day, you have just nonstop lines, 6 hours. So that's my personal experience, but that gives you 6 hours to get a battery backup out there, you can use any phone like bank that you can just plug in and charge it. But yeah, slow day, 8 to 10 hours, busy day, 6 hours.
And because battery life varies over time, I'm assuming that you're saying 6 hours from a fairly new poll pad, that might go down if the poll pad is 3 years old.
The statement is true, but I would like to stress that it's not nearly as bad as it used to be with the advancement in batteries. So, and the fact that, we're used to, you think iPad and you're like, oh yeah, because I use my iPad every day. you're going to be using if you follow the battery care instructions, which we would provide, you do not see a large drop by the time, we're getting to the refresh of the hardware.
And how long does this hardware, what's this planned life?
I feel like
total cost of ownership, does it, is this something that we can use for 10 years? Is it something we can use for, 2 years and then we feel like we need to replace it, or what's your estimate on that?
So I feel like a politician because I feel like I'm giving two answers every time. The truth, so as long as the iPad's alive, it will work, right? Here's where it gets tricky. States have certification, right? Certification is going to express what application you need to be on. As Apple changes iOS, our application follows the iOS. So what the standard life is 6 to 7 years, because normally at the 7-year mark, Apple stops writing code for that tablet version. So we have counties that are still using Gen 5 pads right now for the November election because we still support the software. But once we get to a point where the software has to be on an iOS that your pad can't get to, that's where the hardware change comes over. So, and we normally can give you, 2-year notice of this is what we anticipate based on Apple's trends.
Okay. I know we're discussing costs in this particular meeting or not. Should we, is that a question we take offline?
Yeah, I think we take that offline.
Okay. Okay. Are there other questions?
Are the batteries replaceable?
If you heard that, the batteries in the iPad, can you take them out and put new ones in, or not really?
You can for about the cost of a new iPad.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns?
So I think we obviously want to get some answers in terms of cost of various implementations. So I think I'll send an email to you with some maybe follow-up questions around cost, and we can discuss that offline.
Absolutely. Yeah, any additional questions you have, if we need to hop on, if you have some technical questions, and I need to get a cybersecurity person on here, development person, let me know. I'm glad to jump on any meetings you guys have and assist with questions.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some cybersecurity questions, but we can save that until our next discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you for saving for the next discussion because I would fumble through that. I'm not the cybersecurity guy. I know enough to be dangerous. I can spout, oh, it meets NIST 146-2 or something like that. I don't even know what that means. It's a talking point they give me. So we'll get experts on
some questions in advance, so we don't want to sandbag you.
So we'll get experts on that line for you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate the time. Have a good evening.
You too.
What's our time frame for a decision on this?
So part of the question is going to be how much do you want to spend and when do you want to spend it, right? So right now we have the current vendor Civics, who's providing support for us through this election. After this election, we would have a choice of going to CalCare, the reform group that actually originated the software for the DevTech platform that we have now, or making a decision to go to a different platform, right? I'm not super, I don't think the vendor we have now, Civics, is going to be that excited even towards this election, but there's a pretty good user group of people who really like the tech, and I'm connected with them, and so I expect it will be able to be fine for this election. But if we go forward with DevTech or we choose something else, it's going to cost us something either way, right?
And that's what we're going to have to see.
What's our life expectancy on the poll books we currently
The
have?
existing laptops, I think we got them in 2020, some of them, and maybe a couple in 2022. So they're a couple years old. I don't know what's the lifetime of a laptop? You tell me what you think of that, right? Or a laptop, right?
Yeah, I use Macs, I don't use Windows, so I
Yeah.
can't tell you.
I mean,
It's the same difference.
yeah, I think it's very similar. The description that he was talking about is basically the poll books we had previously were on Windows 7. And once, the vendor no longer supported the software, and Windows 7 was no longer supported, everything had to go up. And when they did that, they just said, well, there's no point trying to make your old hardware work with the new software because it won't support,
Right.
new Windows. So just go ahead and get the whole thing because the hardware is actually not.
So whether our present books running on Windows 10?
Yes, it's Windows, I'm pretty sure it's Windows 10. Double check.
Yeah, which is a problem in itself because
Eventually that will.
Microsoft will be discontinuing support of Windows 10.
So basically, we're not looking at a totally new cost for that. What we're looking at is which cost are we going to?
Yeah, and for example, depending on what the numbers are, you might say, well, look, we want to go for another year with this, no, after another year, we can make a choice.
And then we jump ship.
Yeah.
Right, or you might say, you know what, we like this better enough that it's time to jump ship and save the money we would be paying on support.
Right.
We don't have enough information to get close to a decision.
Right, I think we're just starting down this path.
But it's good to see this.
And we will have to make a decision one way or the other, after this election.
It's visually a very different approach.
Yeah, I think I've seen some, well, not, okay, I've seen demos on this type of thing. I haven't ever actually seen it.
So for what it's worth, my recommendation might be that you reach out to other members of electoral boards and see what their experience is. Now you know the name of the vendor. You can say who else is using this vendor.
Well, they're doing pretty well in terms of signing people up.
Yeah, they've done pretty well in terms of signing.
Yeah, and they have Fairfax County, I would say, which is huge.
There's a big count, yeah.
I saw it in Viva, that's where I saw it.
So, okay, shall we move on from this topic now
Yes.
to backup polling places? I think we all believe there should be backups.
Yeah, so I've sent you a list of possible, ideas for each polling place based on whether or not they are, the ones that are not in the same ATCO circuit, with the thought that, one of the most likely challenges at a polling place causing an emergency would be loss of power. That's really not the only criteria, but I figured that was at least a big enough criteria that I would give you some thoughts around that.
You did have Blackwater Creek flowing through there.
Yeah, and so I tried to list the circuits and the ones that were on and find ones that were in the precinct that were not on the same circuit. That doesn't mean, maybe you can have an emergency polling place mobile at another location, like maybe Heritage High School could host a second polling place in an emergency. So the options I've thrown out there are not the only options. Right?
Dan, what I'm having a problem visualizing is if we go to these alternatives, some of which you've thrown out already, do we go around doing the ADA analysis, talking to the people, getting a commitment from that place to get backup, and then signing them up as a backup with a backup polling place agreement adopted by the city as well as them and us?
Yeah, I mean, my view would be, yes, we should do this as formally as we think we need to. And I think also that includes, getting back to the city risk management and saying, here's a backup polling place, can you issue them a certificate in the event that we use them, right?
That's a lot of moving pieces.
There's a lot of moving pieces, yes.
Which is one reason that I suggested, for example, Heritage Methodist could conceivably move to Heritage High School, which already has a certificate, just put them in one of the gyms instead of the cafeteria, because that's where
Right.
3-4 is.
If we could,
So it has to be within 1 mile. My understanding is that it still has to meet the criteria, the ADA requirements, it has to be within 1 mile of the original precinct. That's my understanding. For example, I'm gonna go online, but let's just say we find out the day before that one of these precincts has a water main break and they can't be used.
Yeah,
So then I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna put an emergency polling place request to elect, let them know we're gonna need to be moved, and here's what's gonna go. They're gonna still maybe check the box, is it ADA compliant? And, is it within 1 mile, the other criteria that they have?
so is it possible, yeah, so you're saying essentially it's impossible to have, say, one backup for every ward because we're running more than a mile from some part.
It's possible. I mean, we have to look and see, what, like, there may be a happy coincidence that we have a spot that we could really, maybe you could even use, Heritage High School, because it's on the edge of a ward. Maybe you could use it for.
St. Thomas More.
Right, for St. Thomas More. Maybe that's within a mile. So maybe we could even, if we pick it right, you could pick 4 backups and then we cover the whole city or 5, something like that.
And do they have a generator so the power is not an issue?
That's a good question. I think, Betty, we discovered that supposedly Presbyterian Church out there on, which one was it? Was it Rivermont? No, it wasn't Rivermont, it was the other one.
First
They-
Presbyterian on BES.
First Pres, they actually have a generator. So in theory, that, although whether we're in the circuit, the socket and it goes to the generator is a whole other question, right? So,
Well, we're throwing out ideas here.
Well, I was just gonna ask that list that you sent out with the electric, was that recently or was that the one from last summer?
I mean, I sent it out last summer, I sent it out again, I think.
I think it's refined, it's been manipulated some.
Okay, maybe I tweaked it, just tweaked it.
How long ago was it that you sent it?
We sent it out about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And it's-
I can send it again, I can send it again. not a
If
problem.
you want a copy, it's nice.
Well, I was out of town, so I'll go back and look for.
Yeah, I mean, and Betty has actually looked at the ones that we had, and looked at the backups that were. But you and I are deficient in that.
Totally. Yeah, we do need to settle on, I know we have a list that had a number of them,
I mean, we
that
could,
already had backups.
we could rubber stamp what Dan has proposed and back and go and do the field work for it. But it begs the overall question of really, are we doing good disaster planning here? Which is, I think, more focused about, can we consolidate some of these and have have a few number of backups rather than 18 backups?
It would make it a lot easier. And again, it comes back to your question about certificates of liability. And how do we change that over? And what happens, heaven forbid, if we have to move from one location to the backup location on the same, during the day? Is that something that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think physically would happen. My guess is you just have to write the certificate of liability to address, that situation or whatever situation you have.
That's relative.
Okay,
It's really, I think it would be good if we could identify some locations that would reduce the number of backups that we could have. And maybe just concentric circles or some, maybe there's a computer mapping.
Well, I'll take a compass, okay, a little compass with the thing and the thing, and I go to Kurt's map on the wall in the registrar's office, I make it a mile, and I just do a little circle, and we'll see what falls within.
I think that's useful.
yeah. I mean, Sandusky might fit within, Sheffield might fit within the heritage.
I prefer us going in that direction
Okay,
rather than 18 backups.
okay,
I don't think 18 backups is doable. I think fewer backups is much more doable.
Just kills. And it's not really useful.
okay. That's fine. I'm amenable to you, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming out. And I think that at our next meeting after the election, we should focus on that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll take a look at that, and try and get some time out on the road to look at some of these places. There's not a lot of locations
No,
in 3-4
Right.
that are willing to do it.
that's right, that's right. Okay, so let's move on from polling places to appointment of election officers. Betty, that's your baby, and I'd rather hand it to you that you really have done this master list with updating what we all have to know about them. And it's a whole lot.
Now there are a lot of people.
And you've done some screening for this election. Maybe you should describe some of the screening you've done for this election in terms of some of the people, relatives of candidates, for instance.
Right, so I have the names of 47 applicants to be election officers to be appointed today. So we're adding to the list with these, and it includes 26 that represent the Democratic Party and 13 for the Republican Party, and 8 have chosen to be non-affiliated. And that brings our total list up to 254 people. Now the problem is getting them to come to training and be prepared and eligible to be assigned to the precincts. Some people that have left our list temporarily anyway are relatives of candidates. So they will not be serving in our precincts. And we do require background checks of all of our election officials.
And Dan, how are we going to get those done?
So Betty sent an email. I will, I try not to mess with Betty's spreadsheet. But I will interact with
She's
her.
offered to have another column.
Well, she may need more than another column, right? But anyway, I think in the version of the spreadsheet that I had, I did have actually a whole other sheet that was feeding information to the column on the right side of the master sheet. So.
He has a magical,
Yes.
a more magical spreadsheet than I do.
Right, so I will work with her to get her spreadsheet with some of the same features. And typically, just so you know, it takes about, once I have, the list of people, I can usually get a background check for almost everybody within a day or two. Sometimes some information is missing, and it takes a little extra work.
Well, we need to get that moving because we need to get these people locked in on this. But this is all with agenda item pointing back up, appointing election officers. And for the record, in terms of serving and relatives, the law, there's only one provision in the law that says that certain designated relatives, children, parents and such, cannot serve as election officers. But that only is if a candidate objects to the service of an election officer. We as board can approve election officers or even take them off the list. We're right now simply voting on the election officers, not taking anyone off the list. But Betty has observed and maintained the list in such a way that we don't seem to be going into this election with officers, election officers who are relatives. That's pretty correct. So do we have a motion to appoint these, Betty?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we appoint these 47 candidates.
I will second that.
Kurt, call the question, all in favor, say aye. It passes. Okay, well, that's very good. That's a good, healthy list. Now we move into the public comments. Are there any public comments? Wales application.
You
Go ahead.
You want me to go? Okay. Redeemer, candidate for our third ward, and you probably have already heard there's some concerns about a certain organization that's been operating in Lynchburg quite visibly and arguably the most visible organization going on politically in Lynchburg for several months now. It's Lynchburg is a Better Together organization, which has billboards and yard signs and large signs supporting several of the candidates running for city council in Lynchburg. Particularly my opponent has benefited from this organization. I did some cursory looking on state websites to try to identify if this organization had registered as required as a political action committee in Virginia. And I was unable to identify or find this organization. It appears that there's no filing of finance reports as well. So we don't know exactly how much money this organization has raised. We don't know how much they've spent. We know they've raised a lot based on news reports that show a large amount of money that has come into this organization several weeks ago. So I'm not sure how much since then, but we also see their authorization and paid for statements on at least 3 out of the 4 Democrat candidates in the city. I don't know if they're solely a Democrat organization or not. I haven't received any offer of any funds from them. As a candidate, I have to file the statement of organization with the state. I'm sure you did as well. And I have to complete finance reports that show both expenditures and money where I received money from. And according to Virginia state law 24.2-949, section 1 through 9, political action committees in Virginia are also required to file similar papers and also required to disclose their expenditures, what they're spending on, and where their money is coming from. It could be argued that this one organization has potentially raised more money and spent more money than all the candidates for city council put together, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. The problem is, we just don't know. We don't know. And as an advocate for transparency and openness that I've been in my life, I appreciate the laws, the way they are written. They are supposed to help protect our voters. They're supposed to help protect our elections. And I think the elections in Lynchburg deserve to be protected from not knowing where the money comes from and not knowing exactly how it's spent. So I hope that if indeed this organization wants to make Lynchburg better, that they will start disclosing their expenditures and they will start letting us know where their money's coming from. And we will know whether or not they are the organization spending the most money on this election and raising the most money on this election that affects our citizens in Lynchburg. I would like to humbly request, respectfully request that the Electoral Board and the Lynchburg Voter Registrar look into this with Elect and State Board of Elections and try to determine if indeed they have complied with Virginia law. Commonwealth is very clear about exactly what we're supposed to be doing as candidates and as political action committees. And we're trying to follow the law. And every organization that's operating in the city limits should also be trying to follow the law. And if indeed the law has been broken, I would humbly, respectfully request, and I will certainly do it as well, that every violation of the law be prosecuted by our Commonwealth Attorney, by our Virginia Attorney General, by whatever legal authorities are responsible for defending the citizens of Lynchburg from these violations of these laws. I hope that we can find out that this organization is just an oversight. They're not trying to intentionally pervert our state laws. That would be great. I'd like to hear that that's true, and I would like them to then file the reports they're already delinquent on. And also to do their statement of organization. They should have done a long time ago before they were on the front page of the news in advance and in the WSET news coverage and so visible on all our billboards. So I think in the interest of having open, fair, and transparent elections in Lynchburg, that you as the authorities who are responsible and accountable for holding our elections would look into this and see what you can determine and make sure that our laws in Virginia are followed. And I appreciate your time.
Yes, I hadn't planned on commenting on this, but since this topic has come up, anyway, I can comment on, not on the whole thing really, but on some aspects of it. The question of whether the Lynchburg Better Together is in fact required to register as a separate PAC is one that I can't directly comment on. I'm not enough familiar enough with the rules on that. However, I would expect that that organization will be commenting on it, and certainly it would be unfortunate to reach any conclusions without first hearing from them. Another aspect of this is that the same press release from the Lynchburg Republican City Committee, which I have looked at, also made several points about the disclaimers on signs by the candidates and or by the Lynchburg Better Together organization, for the problems with the accuracy of the disclaimers. Okay. There are a few things that I would like to point out in regard to the disclaimers on campaign signs. Okay, number one, the release from the Republican City Committee made at least one incorrect statement on the disclaimers for one of the yard sign for one of the candidates, and this was the Democratic candidate Sterling Wilder for Ward 2. The Republican press release said, and I quote, however, Democrat Sterling Wilder's yard signs only state approved by Wilder for Ward 2 without the required paid for by statement, failing to disclose who funded his signs. Okay, that statement is incorrect. Because the code 24.2.956, and I won't read the whole thing, but this is the requirements for print media advertisements for candidate committees, specifically for candidates. And it says that, of course, it does require a disclosure. However, it does say, and again, I will quote this, the statement paid for by, and then the name of the candidate, may be replaced by the statement authorized by. So it's quite incorrect to say that there is a requirement. In this case, it may be different for other situations, but in this case, there is no requirement for a paid for by statement worded as such. It can be replaced by authorized by statement instead with the name of the candidate or the candidate's committee. So this means that very clearly this statement, at least in the Republican release, is incorrect And it certainly leads to the question whether the others, any of the other statements may well be incorrect. Okay. Also, the release gives the impression that it is only Democratic candidates who have problems with disclaimers on campaign signs or other political advertising. That is not the case. And I can point out just a few examples. See, this is just yesterday. I believe it was either yesterday or Tuesday. There was a very large bus which was part of a campaign event at the registrar's office, including, of course, several local Republicans. But the bus had slogans including Trump 2024 painted all over the bus and also the trailer behind it, both sides of the bus, both sides of the trailer. So this obviously was outdoor advertising, which is required to have a disclaimer. There was no disclaimer anywhere on the bus or on the trailer. So this is just one example of problems with disclaimers by campaign material for Republican candidates. And I have photos of it, and of other instances where there was either an incorrect disclaimer or the absence of a disclaimer altogether.
Thank you.
And I can provide that. In fact, I have some of the photos with me.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Others, any other comments?
Several questions for Dan. When you put up the stats for the localities, and you mentioned, someone mentioned something about inactive voters. I didn't notice there's no column for inactive in there. Is that something that is tracked and could be?
So, yeah, so the reports I'm generating are generated straight out of Veris. And talking to the registrars, they've advised me not to try to mix and match data, because I've looked at this myself and I see that if you try to mix and match data, you may not be giving an accurate picture of what's there. It's best to use the reports as they are. So the report
Register where they came from. And you mentioned somebody mentioned about DMV. There was almost 16,000 people.
correct.
Right, and how many voters are there in the city approximately? 50,000?
Yes, 58,183.
60,000? So what does that, is that like new people that have, or is that address changes? too?
Correct.
It seems like an awful high number for a population.
Address changes as well.
Right, so yes, so remember, when you change your address, the way you change your address is to put in a voter registration application. So this report, this is why you can't mix and match reports. This report basically just says how many applications came in and where did they come from. It doesn't tell you, are they change of address, are they newly moved into the state, or newly moved into Lynchburg? It doesn't tell you any of that, it just says how many applications came in and where they come from. And because the DMV has another voter, would it automatically register you unless you opt out of registering it will always send us a registration application. So it's a measure of how much work we do processing applications, but it doesn't tell you how many people are really, new voters. Right? That's why
So if you were looking at stats for like month to month, and you had a beginning number of people who were registered, let's say that's 50,000, and you had 5,000 people who registered, turned in a registration for DMV, and then the total number of registrants was like 51,000. It doesn't seem to make sense, but it's mostly because those are changes, the same people are still here, but they're moved.
Right, that's why we have three different reports that kind of looks at the similar data from different perspectives, right? So if you want to know active, inactive, and it also puts military on there, that's one report. The locality statistics, what's happening in, out on every precinct, that's the next report. How many voter registration applications did we actually process? That's the third. So they don't look at the
You
data.
have to do a lot, if you want to get into that, you have to do a lot of your own brain work instead of just reading.
You would, and you have to be careful not to turn it into inaccurate nonsense.
Okay, thank you.
I asked the same question when I first came.
And so did I. You gave me the question, and I asked others, and that's what they told me.
Okay, I think it's time to close the public comment.
Are you comfortable with the number of election officials you have?
Well, comfortable, I mean, it's a lot. But like I said, it's one thing to appoint them here at the meeting. It's another thing to get them to show up for a classroom session of training and then a hands-on session of training.
Do you feel like you're running short? Or do you
Oh, no,
feel-
I think we have plenty of people. Just get to show up.
Thank you.
But if you run across somebody who wants to be an election officer, please send them to us.
Right, and they'll come to training, send them to us.
We had a fellow contact us just this week, who's 74, 76 years old, 78, and said couldn't work all day, but we could put him in a 4-hour slot in the central office processing. So it's very easy. Shall we think about adjourning the meeting?
I would be happy to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Everybody said aye.
I wasn't registered.
Well, I think the only reason we went to 6:15 was because we had a very thorough presentation.
It was good showing.
Yeah.
Required.
Yes, sir.
And it does allow me.